shy about making these trades. Give us your thought process behind them, pulling the trigger there to move up for Hyatt.
I mean, it was a good player that we liked that was kind of sticking out on our board. So at a position that, we thought he could help us, at receiver. He ran 4.3 and some change. You could feel his speed on film. I mean, that's legit. So just a player we liked, we spent some time with, and, we thought the value was good for what we had to give up to go get him.
How much of a priority has it been through this offseason to make this offense, particularly the passing game, more explosive? So that's what he does, and Waller, obviously.
Yeah, I would say both sides of the ball, just team speed in general, OD and special teams. So I think we did that with some of the free agents we signed. Paris Campbell can roll, Jeff can roll, Okereke runs well, Banks runs. We've upgraded the speed in general, Waller. So, yeah, that's definitely something watching our team last year. We just felt, we needed to get faster in all three phases.
Joe, every time you make a pick, that means you might have to not get another guy, right? So when you look at the totality of today, you get a center who you assume will probably, challenge for a starting job, and you're one of the fastest receivers in this draft. Did you think that was feasible to get these two players today?
Not really. As well as deals, we were joking around after we took the center, and we were just kind of like, hey, I wonder if we can get them both. And so I told the guys, I said, just start making calls when it looks like we can do it for our 4 when it comes into range. And we made a couple phone calls, and some teams were interested in doing it. So yeah, we were ecstatic to be able to get him.
How dangerous of a deep threat guy is Hyatt when you watch him?
Yeah, he can roll. I was at that Alabama game, and I can't remember why I came in late, but I was a little bit late. So I was on the field for the first half. I was coming from another game, landed there, and then first half I was on the field, and you could really feel his speed. Like that's legit 4.3.
Just a quick follow-up to that. Do you typically watch games from the sideline, or is that an outlier?
No, but again, sometimes flight delays and everything else. So I had some issues with my travel, and I was able to get there for pregame, but not enough time to see the body type. So I stayed down there and kind of looked at the guys physically, and then went up to the press box after that. Yeah, you could see more from the press box. I feel like I see it better.
Why do you think he fell when you like a guy like that and he has that kind of speed? Why do you think he fell as far as he did?
I'm not sure. I'm glad he was there, though. Josh Heupel, the head coach at Tennessee, is a good friend of mine. We go way back. Oklahoma was my area a long time ago when he was a quarterback coach, so I've known him for a long time. And he was the head coach at Central Florida when we took Gabe Davis when we were in Buffalo. So there's some history there. I called him at some point today and just checked in on Hyatt, and we had him in on a visit. And again, I'm not sure why he was there, but we feel good about him, and we're glad he was.
What's your impression of Hyatt, and how important was it to you to get more of that speed around Daniel?
Yeah, no, I think he's a good player. I think he's runs some of the routes that we've run here, so you can see, a little bit like Gabe, how it might translate. But again, everything's new for him. He's a young guy. We'll throw him in the mix with the other receivers and let those guys compete it out. But he had a good visit here. Definitely has some qualities that you like when you're watching him. Good young man, so happy we have him.
Just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
Everybody always is happy with their draft. Nobody walks away saying it sucked, right? But when you look at just what you've done so far, you've kind of hit on 3 needs in these three first picks here. Is that something you anticipated being able to accomplish going into this?
Well, I think you never know. We have a lot of meetings, I would say, leading up to the draft, and then these last few days, and you go through a lot of different scenarios. It's an inexact science, but I'd say there's a lot of preparation. I think Joe does a fantastic job, working the phones and being prepared, along with, I'd say Tim and Brandon and Dennis and the rest of the scouts. They've done a great job. So, again, you draft these players, you put grades on them, you come in, you coach them up, but you let them compete it out. That's what we're all about. So it's just adding new pieces, just like we did in free agency. We'll get them out there on the field and see how they do.
Joe, did what the Eagles did yesterday on their defensive line
make the center position that much more of a focus for you today?
Not really. You know, it was a position we were looking the entire offensive line. Again, we look across all of them, but I mean, you're always looking at the division. It's important on how you match up. You know, I go back to when, you know, he was at New England and they had the two really good tight ends. You're always trying to figure out who can cover Gronk or, you know, whoever it may be. So, yeah, you're always looking at it. But I think, you know, being strong on the offense and defensive line, regardless, is always going to be a priority of ours. So,
What
Schmitz is a great kid. I know we haven't talked about him, but, I mean, smart, tough, dependable, you know, played a lot of ball, had a great Senior Bowl. You know, he's a good player and a great kid.
What do you like about the pairing of him specifically with Daniel, kind of the way those two can operate together if he earns that starting job?
Yeah, we'll see how it works out. I know we've, you know, spent time with him, and he's a great kid. He embodies what we want to be about, and he's a good football player. So, again, everybody's going to come in here, compete, earn their spot, and, you know, we'll see how it falls. But, you know, he's wired the right way.
It seems a couple of the knocks on Jalen a little bit kind of slight. I'm just kind of parroting what people are saying. You watch a lot more film. When you look at the frame and his body type, what gives you the confidence that maybe he can either grow into it or he can play with that body type in the NFL?
Yeah, I think he's still young. I think there's a similar body type down the road that we play twice a year. You know, that's a good player, was drafted much higher. But, yeah, again, you look at it, you look at the group, you know, how tall they are, long they are, thick they are. And, you know, I know the offensive staff and Dave's, they do a great job of putting guys in the best position to succeed. And what are the routes they run best? How can we accentuate what they do well? And then they'll kind of formulate, you know, the offense around that. So, you know, I think he'll be fine.
Joe, Schmitz was the one guy you didn't trade up for. Is that because you felt he was going to fall, or because you felt there were a lot of guys at 50, 70?
I wish. Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball. Yeah, it's hard. You know, patience, I wouldn't say is one of my strengths, and I often get tested this time of year because it's like anything. If you want it and you have the resources to get it, like, go get it. And I've been on the other side of that when you're sitting there kicking yourself for not doing something, and you don't like the subsequent result from not doing what you could have done, and you were okay with, you know, what it was going to cost you. So, yeah, I mean, Chicago jumped up in front of us, and, you know, you thought, okay, maybe, you know, who knows what they're going to take. So there were a couple players there we would like, but you got to be at peace with that if it happens and say, hey, let's just stay patient. And we did that, and, you know, any type of move up would have cost us another pick, and then maybe you don't end up with Jalen. So, you know, I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Would you say that last year you really couldn't do this to the level you did this year? You know what I mean? You needed more picks last year. This year, is that fair to say you can cherry pick a little more?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think we had a few more resources in free agency, so we were able to add more depth pieces in March and April, you know, along with maybe some of those practice squad guys we had last year that had developed, or, you know, the Isaiah Hodgins of the world. So had a little bit more depth. We added some, you know, starting pieces in free agency, or guys that'll compete for starting spots. So maybe you don't need the, you know, the depth and the numbers that I felt like we needed last year.
Was Hyatt a guy that you would have considered where you took Schmitz?
He was in the range. He was in the range.
When you guys have both talked about, from a receiver perspective in this offense, how complicated it is.
All right, I thought you'd ask like an offensive line question.
You know,
Okay,
Paul just took
all right, we can keep this receiver.
But just in terms of the complicated nature of the routes you guys run in this offense, for Jalen, I would imagine he has the diverse game to be able to run what you guys run at different spots in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say this with all the players, particularly the young ones that come in, you evaluate them on tape, and then you get them here, and you try to do what they do well. You have a good idea of watching the tape, but sometimes they come in and they can do a few more things that maybe you didn't think they could do, or maybe you don't want to do as much as you thought you would do with one of them. So, you know, our job as a coaching staff, our offensive coaches, whether it's receivers, tight ends, running backs, is let's figure out what these guys do well, and then we have a pretty expansive system, which I'm sure most people do. But once you pare it down and find out who's going to be running those things, then you make sure you adapt and do the things that your players can do well, whether it's the quarterback, the receivers, blocking schemes with the line, defensive players, you know, that's the job of a coaching staff, but, yeah. And our other third-round pick was Waller, so, you know, we try to do what we can do with him, too.
It's true.
So I'll give you the
That pick's
offensive
coming
line
up,
question
probably.
then. I mean, is that?
One more time?
I'll give you the offensive line question then. When you have a young guy coming in like Schmitz, how much of it is can he handle the physical load, but also the mental capacity to be able to do this job?
Yeah, I think that's, regardless if it's this offense or any other offense, it's, you know, you're coming in from college and you're playing against grown men up front. So I'd say there's a learning curve mentally, but there's also a physical curve too. And we won't find that out until August, but this guy's tough, he's smart, he's got a good frame, former wrestler, good leader. So we'll throw him in the mix, let him compete it out with the other guys and see how it ends up.
How important was
Both
that?
you guys on the offensive line, on Schmitz, he kind of, when we had him on the conference call, described himself as nasty. You know, he sounded like kind of a polite young man on the telephone. So
Yeah.
is that something that you've seen on film? Did you notice that when you took him to dinner? You know, anything, you know, what's your take on that?
Yeah, you see it on film.
Yeah, you see it on film, yeah.
He's a
Not
good
when you're
finisher.
sitting across from him, but you throw on the film, you see it.
Nothing bad happened during dinner or anything like that?
No, he's I mean, we did a FaceTime with him, with the whole group, and, you know, he basically wanted to put his helmet and shoulder pads on like that instant, standing with his parents. So he loves the game of football, and just another good offensive lineman to work with.
So you saw a lot of things where Schmitz and Tippmann were, you know, almost interchangeable. One could go in front of you. Did you like Schmitz more than Tippmann?
Yeah, there was a lot of offensive linemen we liked in this draft, and they went through, you know, I don't want to get into how we have them ranked or something, but they're both good football players, both in New York, and I think they'll both have successful careers.
Brian, yesterday we saw Wink give a pretty aggressive hug to the general manager after the cornerback. As the head coach, are you allowed to express that when you get a 4-3 receiver? I mean, or do you
Sure.
have to
No, I did it with the defensive, with Tay too. Look, these guys, Joe does a great job, like I said, of leading the entire draft with the people that, you know, you're just these scouts that are busting their tail and they're gone for 6 months. They might have, you know, however many people that they want to select, and we don't select any of them from their area, if you can imagine that. They're gone from their families, they're working their tails off, but they do a great job of setting up the board, communicating with the coaches. You know, it's a really good process, but I'd say this guy leads it up. He does a great job of it.
I actually asked the wrong question. How did Kafka respond to the pick of the receiver?
No, he's jacked up too. Yeah, him, Mike Groh, yeah, everybody was. Yeah, Kafka was excited about the center too.
Brian, obviously, Schmitz is a center, right? And you guys had talked about maybe having Ben play a little center. So how does that work out? Will Ben compete with Schmitz at center? Do you want Ben as your left guard? How do you see that? How do you see Ben's role, I guess, shaking out now?
We'll find out. We'll throw them all out there, and again, we haven't had practice yet. You know, we've selected some new players, some free agents. We'll start phase 2 on Monday, which is a little bit different from phase 1, but can't get out in front of each other until we get to phase 3, and then, you know, that's really a teaching type of camp, if you will. You know, I don't think you want to put too much on the rookies early on because, you know, let's be honest, they've been on the road. You know, Tay's been on the road however many visits, and, you know, they have to, you know, kind of reacclimate themselves, and you want to be smart with them and, you know, slowly integrate them into the system. But, you know, that's what you do every year. You try to build as much competition for your roster as you can, and that's what we're trying to do.
Joe, how much of a mind game is it when you're in the draft room and you're picking second round saying, well, if I take the center now, am I still going to get the wide receiver? Or how do you play that? Do you just take the best player or what?
Yeah, in that case we did, and we weren't even really thinking about that. We weren't thinking about the subsequent pick. You're really, you know, there's something out there that you want or you desire, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting. Don't know if it's going to be there. You know, that's tough, and it can be stressful. So that's why, again, sometimes you're aggressive, sometimes you move back. You know, last year in the second round, we moved back twice. So based on the situation, who's there, you know, where you are as a roster, you're always taking that into account. You know, we met extensively today and, you know, went through different scenarios in the roster and kind of wants and needs on the roster. And, I think, worked out well for us this evening.
Joe, when you're talking to so many different teams like you were tonight, looking into trade-ups, how many different people are on the phone at once? Like, are you on the phone? Is Brandon making some of these calls? Like, how is that all working?
Yeah, last night, again, the first round, it's a little bit slower. You get more time to turn in your pick. There's, you've been through, again, those so many different scenarios, especially last night. So that was more myself. And then today it's a group effort. Dave's actually executed his first trade. He initiated the trade with the with the Rams, so I congratulate him on that. But no, if you know somebody, hey, why don't you shoot the Rams a text or give them a call, and again, then we'll hey, this is what it looks like it would be. Does it make sense? And then we call and just say, hey, when you're on the clock, let us know.
So is that a FaceTime trade then?
That was a text.
No, that was not a FaceTime trade. No, it's like.
We had to type it in his phone for him. He said, "Here, you just type it in for me."
Yeah, I'm a FaceTimer. That's about it. Oh, that's great. I'm gonna go get a cheeseburger right now.